The Dark Blood Covenant. Chapter 6, A Holy Warrior's Home. Macus was undoubtedly a wealthy man in his own right. The house was regal, but standard, in the section reserved for the holy warriors of any rank. Ishal stood in one of the large rooms. It was the furnishings that left Laramie in awe. The two large windows had their thick drapes pulled shut, blocking the room from any outside view. The furniture of an elegant style that Ishal had never seen before looked to have a foreign flair. Thick padded seats on a set of overstuffed chairs accompanied a large desk. The walls were covered in books. Macus was a reader, the fact was indisputable. Ishal was not well versed in reading. He could make out words well enough, but it was nothing he enjoyed spending time on. It was Laramie who loved to read. She never had much chance to acquire books of her own. Those she had gotten into her hands were read repeatedly. Ishal had always found it amusing. She was so happy to get a book, but equally disheartened to finish it. He had seen her stare for hours at a cover, then taking it in her hands, and setting it back down. She had told him it was like opening a present. Much of her joy came from thinking about what could possibly be inside. Ishal smiled as his eyes set lovingly on his wife. As long as they were staying with Macus, she could read until her heart was content. He had no doubt that would please her very much, and that brought Ishal deep contentment. Macus broke through the moment as he came into the room and slammed the door. He moved at a brisk pace across the room. Being such a large man made his demeanor almost intimidating. He stopped at the desk, and banged a fist into the thickly varnished surface. The sudden turbulent emotion causing Laramie to jump. Macus had not seen her movement, but he ground out in a low rumble, "I ask pardon for my actions, but High Priest Evans has always found a way to rub me wrong. If I do not vent my frustrations with the arrogance not now, one of us may perish in our next meeting. He must be a charming fellow for you to show such joy at the prospect." Ishal wondered if he had made a new enemy in High Priest Evans. Macus looked over to Laramie. She was standing hands folded before her. It was not his intention to upset her. She was pregnant after all. With no close female friends or relatives of his own, Macus could only go on the knowledge he had been exposed to when it came to such delicate matters. Wasn't it a bad thing to overly stimulate or upset a woman in that condition? He watched as the books once again drew her attention. "Do you like reading, Laramie?" "Yes," she said quietly. There was more than a twinge of hope in her voice. Smiling brightly at her, Macus said, "Then feel free to avail yourself to any book in the house, my dear. I would like to speak with your husband privately for a while. So if you could please retire to any room upstairs to rest or read, I would greatly appreciate it." She looked to Ishal and awaited his approving nod. Reaching a hand out, she pulled the first book her fingers touched. Then walked to her husband. She rose to her toes, and he leaned to his side, so that she could land a small kiss to his cheek. Ishal patted her arm gently, before she made her way out of the room. The faint click of the latch signaling that she was gone. Ishal had no doubt she was already racing up the stairs, book in hand, in excitement. "Am I in trouble?" Ishal was quickly learning that he could trust Macus's words. That was why it was so unsettling to have Macus give a quick reply. Was there ever any doubt? Macus slapped both hands down on the desk. He clenched the edge so hard, it was a miracle the wood didn't split. "Seriously, Ishal, this man is not to be taken lightly. He may not look like much, but he is a political bulldog. He loves here Ethan his demons with a passion not many can surpass. In the Holy Temple this is a good thing. Hating demons is a more than admirable trait the man and I do share. I can find no fault with him there." Ishal crossed his arms over his chest and rocked back on his heels. "I can say that in his place I would do just about anything to free the world of them. Unfortunately he does not differentiate between dark bloods and the beasts summoned by Here Eth. He lumps the dark bloods, like you, in with them." Macus continued, wanting to stress the danger of Ishal's position. "He already has plans for you. I know him well enough to say he will not be denied. So that is what I am to everyone? This dark blood term you have used before." Ishal rolled the title over in his head. It was not completely repugnant, The truth was he felt it fit rather well to how he felt since his change. We have had accounts for years of the demons changing humans with great success. Very few have managed their escape. Those that do have not fared well from our scattered reports. Macus explained. This I have already told you. Now that we have some dark bloods of our own under the Holy Temple's protection, Evans wants to find out exactly what the change entails. He is also trying to understand how the demons choose their targets. But if others have escaped, what would make me so special to this High Priest Evans? Ishal felt his mind flaring to life again. I am not of Siri Lursa, and these attacks are unheard of in Haven Wind. At least in my local region. If I had known what fate would befall me, I would have disappeared with Laramie. Perhaps some of the people changed make themselves scarce before the bloodthirsty locals or authorities can get a hold of them. Macus pondered the idea Ishal presented. He straightened and turned toward the man. It seems plausible. The Holy Temple is certainly zealous over anything having to do with your Howard. When you consider that Ellis Tom tried to burn your wife alive for the crime of being married to you, it makes sense. But where would these people go? If they were commoners living in outskirting areas, I would guess that since they can already provide for themselves, that is what they would be doing. Ishal shrugged. It did not seem like such a reach of imagination to him. That someone would rather live a hermit's existence, rather than be dragged into this main city that caused him such pain on mere sight. That was not even considering that he was to serve as a test subject for the Holy Temple. And now he knew there were people that already hated and resented his mere existence. All this in hope for a cure which was not even close at hand. Macus frowned. He did not have access to Ishal's turbulent thoughts. He was a holy warrior. A person revered and deeply loved by the people of Siri Lursa. Ishal's desire to be far removed from the city would not have made sense to him. Loving his city as he did. But how would they stay so hidden from us? The Holy Temple has patrols and scouts in every corner of the kingdom. Surely they would turn up somewhere. Ishal leveled golden eyes on Macus. Since I have been changed, there have been some certain differences in my mindset. If I did not want to be found, trust me, you would not. But for you, there was Laramie to consider. Macus ran a hand over his face. It was making more sense as Ishal spoke. So the dark bloods within the walls of Siri Lursa's pillar could just be a fraction of those roaming free. Yes. Laramie is my weakness. One you used, yourself, to get me here. Ishal pointed out. He wanted to make sure that the holy warrior completely understood. I also promised no harm would come to her under my care. Macus reminded Ishal. To keep my word, you are going to have to allow her to remain that way. What do you mean? Evans has no desire to uphold my deal with you. Laramie is to be sent out of Siri Lursa as soon as possible. Macus rose a hand to cut off Ishal's words. It will not happen. I will keep her here at the inner city with me. If Evans has his way and you have to report for inspection and testing, she will be safe here. There is no way she can be implicated in any wrongdoings or misunderstanding that could occur. Laramie must not be touched by this. Ishal said softly, but there was a firm resolve. She is pregnant and will be distressed over this situation. I cannot allow it to harm the child. Macus drew a deep sigh. He moved to the window and pulled open the drapes. The fading light of the day burst into the room. Both men forced to squint away from the painful rays that exposed everything. Ishal was able to see that the action was metaphorical at Macus's next words. This place is under the grace and power of Siri Lursa, goddess of light and life. Keeping anything hidden in her light, that will be the hardest part for all of us. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Laminar and the guards from the temple came around disgustingly early the next morning. High Priest Evans had wasted no time in getting his official order to take Ishal from Macus Thorne's home. There had been very little time to get a maid to escort Laramie upstairs. The last thing Ishal or Macus wanted was to have her bearing witness to the scene. The holy warrior clenched the document in his fist in a high rage. An emotion that was almost unheard of in Macus. He had no idea how the high priest had gotten King Safiel's mark so quickly. It should have taken days for a petition of this insufficiency to gain the king's attention. What bothered Marcus the most was now the tables had been turned on him. He was the one who would have to play through political maneuvering now. Lowering his head into his hand, the pale brown hair falling over his eyes. On top of it all, he was developing a headache. Ishao was dragged out of the house. He tried to push the hands away from him, as the shackles were clasped to his wrists. An image of Laramie caused him to still, and allow himself to be easily subdued. Ishao was pushed down to the ground as the restraints were fitted. Fighting would only make the situation worse. In his half-awake mind, he looked up through hazy eyes to see a man above him. Priest Laminer stood with deceptive calm. A look that was a perfect mixture of boredom and revulsion cast down on the dark blood at his feet. Ishao noted the blinding white fabric of priest robes, the golden embroidery at every hem denoting his position. The guards stood awaiting their orders. Laminer knelt to look into Ishao's golden eyes. So it is true. Your dark blood eyes actually glow with an unholy light of demonic possession. One of the more ominous signs I have seen from your kind. Standing up sharply, Laminer tossed his hands before him. An air of superiority as he looked down on Ishao's form. You should have the decency to lower them before a priest of the holy temple. Ishao ground his teeth together to keep the insults in his mind at bay. Knowing that no matter what he said it would be used against him. The priest waited a moment. Quite possibly hoping for the damning comments that Ishao was fighting to restrain. When nothing happened, the priest turned and waved to the black windowless carriage. Bring the creature, he said simply. Ishao struggled to come to his feet. He did not like the way he was hoisted and tossed forward. There was no cause for his rough treatment. He had not resisted or said a word since they burst into the room and pulled him from his bed. Ishao fell into a long stride to keep the guards from pushing him along. They lifted and fairly threw him into the carriage. A sharp slam of the door hurled him into total darkness. He lifted the shackled hands before his face, but was unable to see anything. So this was how he was going to be treated by the Holy Temple? He smiled at the irony of it all. Ciri Larsa was supposed to be a force of goodness. Seems she had been gone too long. Her subjects had clearly forgotten her code. Marcus turned to enter the house. He would ready himself and speak with his supreme commander of the holy warriors. With luck he could get him to appeal to King Safiel before the sunset. Marcus came up short as he saw Laramie standing on the bottom step. The housemaid behind her, twisting her apron in her hands. Where did they take him? Laramie was almost too calm in her tone as she demanded. Marcus squared his shoulders. Women were not his thing, and he had no idea how to present the situation to her. He went to the direct route. It had worked with her husband. High Priest Evans has convinced the king that Ishao should be placed under his care with the rest of the Dark Bloods in Ciri Larsa's pillar. Will you be able to get him back? Laramie's face fell. She had been expecting this. It was a suspicion she harbored since before they had left Ellistown. It confirmed itself with each action Ishao and Marcus had taken when dealing with her presence. Marcus shook his head. I will do my best, but you should prepare for it to take some time. All the Dark Bloods have been given over to the Holy Temple for quite some time now. They never released any information if the condition is safe to mingle with the public. There is some fear that they could degenerate into full demons at some point. But at this time it is unproven. Laramie sank down to sit on the stair. The brown eyes looking blankly ahead. The little maid gasped and dropped next to her. Mrs. Aiken. Please, do not stress so much. Lord Thorne will handle the matter for you. The maid shot Marcus a hard look. It was obvious she wanted him to step in and help her comfort Laramie. She is correct. Please go to your room and rest. Marcus leaned down and put his hand on Laramie's shoulder. I do not want you working yourself up over something that will eventually be rectified to our satisfaction. I just lost my son, Lord Thorne. I do not think I can continue without my Ishao. Laramie clenched a fist and set it over her heart. The pained look on her face was gut-wrenching. You must be strong, Laramie. Ishal is still alive. He will just be separated from you for a while. During that time, I will watch over you, as I promised your husband. Marcus put a hand under her chin and forced her to meet the blue of his eyes. If you want for anything, you just need to ask. I will get it for you. Now let's get you up to bed. Laramie nodded slowly. She tried to come to her feet, but her shaking legs dropped out from under her. Marcus was a skilled fighting man. He could read movements in combat and assess his enemy. It took him no time to realize Laramie could not stand, let alone walk. Slipping an arm under her legs and hoisting her high against his chest. As he carried Laramie up the stairs, Marcus swore to himself the High Priest Evans would pay for doing this to her. The poor woman had already endured so much. It was just completely unfair to add this burden to her.